Everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show. Glad to have you here today. Hopefully, today's live stream is more effective than yesterday's. We had some technical difficulties, and it just kept made for an interesting day, let's say. And so, hopefully, today will function much better, and all the features will work. And so, we'll take it from there. At least my background is working today, and I've been told that the issues with seeing people yesterday was because of something with LinkedIn. So I'm encouraged at this point that maybe it will go well. Good morning, Rick and Mihad. Uh, Good to have you with us this morning. I'm doing fine, thank you. Hope you are as well. And so, just a reminder to let us know that you're out there. Let us know that you where you're joining from, and be sure and ask questions, make comments, and just in case you hadn't figured out, there's only one of me here today. Anton, unfortunately, has a sick child, so remember him in your thoughts and prayers. But we will press forward. And today, fortunately, I can see your comments, and so that will help make for a better day. And so we're talking about, as always, of course, the Human SOS Show. We are relating to stress in our lives and how to overcome that. And today we're talking about how faith can play into managing stress, and want to discuss some different aspects of that. And I ask a question when I put out the announcement that is faith a factor in how we handle stress? Good morning, Libor. Glad to have you with us from Prague. So as we go along, I'd like to hear your thoughts on faith and stress. Of course, those of you that know me know that I am a person of faith, very much so. And I believe that it factors a great deal for me in how I manage stress. Good morning, Zaid. Good morning, VJ. Glad to have you guys here this morning. But uh, obviously, managing stress is a real challenge for all of us, given everything going on in our culture and our work life and our home life and all aspects. There's just many pressures that affect us. And so, looking for ways to identify the areas where we have stress, of course, is something we're always promoting. And we encourage anyone and everyone to check out the Perspective Force homepage and take the free stress assessment that is there, because the idea is that we want to help identify the root causes of stress in your life, and we want to help you begin to target ways to overcome or manage the stress. But if you don't deal with the roots, then you're not going to be effective in dealing with the sources. And we also promote the concept of 10%. And because we don't want to try to do, as we do quite often with diets and exercise and other components, and try to make radical changes in our lives, which generally don't sustain. And so we look at picking an area that is our most challenging area, and commit to a 10% change, and then get through that and consider other areas. So that's the approach that we promote, and hopefully you'll take advantage of that stress assessment. Again, it's free, and the only people see your email is myself and Anton. Good morning, Hawk. Glad to have you with us. So, faith and stress. Well, first of all, faith comes in a lot of different forms for different people. I know I have a very particular faith and certain tenets that go with that, but it's not the only faith that's out there. And so we want to consider, can faith become a part of addressing stress in our life? And I believe it can, but I also know, depending on how one deals with it, faith can also be a contributor to stress in our life, depending on what that looks like for us. And so let's see, VJ makes a comment. He says there are only two root causes of any type of stress for human beings on earth. They are need and greed. I certainly appreciate the comment, VJ, that those can be factors, or the motivation related to them, of course. How that shows up in our lives is something to really consider. And that's part of the assessment that we use, is to help identify where those areas show up, and help us maybe consider, is it those areas, are we feeding a need or are we feeding greed? So, and Hawk indicates that faith is his shield, and I agree. It's certainly a factor for most of us. Good welcome, John. Glad to have you with us. And Mario, glad to have you as well. And again, it is it is very nice today to have things working normally. If the only thing that would make it any better today would have Anton here, because he's such a key to our time. John, I see your comment that you say borrowed. I'm not sure what your comment is there. If you could maybe share a little bit more as to the nature of your comment, that would be great, because I always like to hear from everyone and be able to address them. And excuse me. So stress, of course, is about things in our lives that, in my opinion, our opinion on this is that we have stress usually about things that we cannot control or influence. And excuse me. And we just need to consider, first off, can things that are in our lives, can we control them? And if we can, we need to make a plan and go about controlling them. If not, can we influence them? Again, if we can, take steps to influence them, plan, and move forward. But if we can't control it and we can't influence it, then we've got to try to let go of it. And for me, letting go is an area where my faith really helps me a lot, because when I let go of something, I release it into God's hands, and knowing that, in my faith, God is loving and gracious. And as a result, he will take that from me and help deal with it. And I can trust that I don't have to deal with it because it's in his hands. And that's where faith comes in for me. And also things that I can control or influence. One aspect of faith for me is to pray about those things and to consider them. Good morning, or hello, Sina. I keep thinking that everyone is around where I am, and I have to remember that we have people from all over the world. So thank you, Sina, for being here. And so I love to share comments. VJ says that his faith in humanity and the Almighty and help and technology help him to channelize his stress. Yeah, I get that. And Hawk's comment, you seem to have a thing for the serenity prayer, Kevin, which I can understand. Yeah, Hawk, I have come to a place where whether I'm using the actual words of the serenity prayer or I'm using the principle of it, I find that it is truly a helpful and remarkable principle to apply. And I think that that's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of simple wisdom there. And so the other side of faith, and again, it depends on each of our faith, but we have to consider that some faiths, and I have to admit, sometimes my own faith can be a factor of stress. If I get caught up in too much of the rules, regulations of my faith, I can start dealing with stress because of guilt. I didn't do enough of this or too much of that or whatever. And that can actually be a stress causer. And I know that other people of faith and other faiths actually express that at times, that can be a factor of stress in their lives. And I know that for me, what I have to do in those cases is spend time in prayer, and during that time of prayer, relating to God, and who I reference as my heavenly Father, because my view of God is not one of this cosmic concept that we can't identify with, but rather a gracious creator and God and loving spirit that wants to have an ongoing relationship with us, and that makes a big difference, and gives me a sense of being able to deal with things. And when I don't understand things, my faith is a place and that I can go to trust. And also, it gives me a place to park or turn over those concerns, stresses, because sometimes the key to the stress is letting go and see what happens with time. And for those, most of you know that I have the Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, and part of what I know there is that the journey in not understanding to understanding is part of what helps us grow and gain wisdom. And Hawk makes a comment that is indeed true, that it's not simple understanding, and can be very profound, and that becomes an important factor. I know one of the things sometimes that will contribute to our stress is that we make things too complicated. And welcome, Lee. Glad to have you today. Appreciate you being here. And Mario makes a good comment. And again, to me, this is kind of a faith statement. And start the day by giving thanks for the new allowed to you. Don't look at problems. Trust the one who can solve everything. Smile more. Pray without haste. Love without limitations. Do your part. God will do the impossible for you. Boy, that's a great example of a faith principle or a faith view. Thank you for sharing that. And again, as that becomes real to us, it goes a long way to addressing the stress that can come in around us. Another tenet of my faith is that I'm instructed to not be conformed to this world, but be renewed in my mind. And I really believe that's valuable because a lot of what goes on in the world around us and a lot of pressures is uh, to become negative, to become um, uh, doubtful and worried and anxious. And so, very important that we renew through right thinking. And that includes a right thinking and perspective of ourselves along the way, and also understanding things about design and what big picture and principle wise helps to keep the world going. And so, again, that's a form of renewing our mind. Libor shares that faith is a great motive power, and no man realizes full possibilities unless he has a deep conviction that life is eternally important and that his work well done is a part of an unending plan. Great quote. I'd never heard that one from Calvin Coolidge, but it is true that our faith is a great motivator, and it is something that is important as we consider, and most faiths in some way or another address eternity. And one of the other values of faith is it brings eternity into our lives, and that perspective, it helps to put our current challenges, our current problems, concerns into a different perspective. And a lot about stress has to do with perspective. And when we can improve our perspective on an ongoing basis at a deeper level, then we can bring these things into that perspective, and they take on a different view to us. In light of eternity, a lot of things become less important because, in light of eternity, they're very small and unimportant. And in light of eternity, we can get a better perspective because part of it is that eternity makes us think beyond the moment, beyond the past, and beyond even the physical future. So, those are all factors in faith and how they can help us as we deal with stress. And, excuse me. Um, so, faith and stress can be connected. Faith can be a tremendous part of dealing with stress in our lives. And also, one of the things that I believe I mentioned in the post announcing today is that, excuse me, uh, that we are made up of three parts, and three parts being our body and a soul and our spirit. And when we are not healthy in all three areas, we tend to not be healthy in any of the areas. And so faith is a part of feeding our spirit, and therefore becomes a way to help us maintain that perspective and that health for us. And very important that we keep that in front of us. And really helpful, again, as we um, deal with and consider stressors. So, as we're going along, if you would if each of you would share a little bit about whether you have faith as part of your journey and part of your life, and if you do, then what are some of the ways that that affects your day to day life? One of the areas that Anton and I talk about, and I've mentioned this morning, is prayer, but another form of that type of activity, of course, is meditation and focusing on things outside of the physical. And we, again, helps us with perspective. Um, let's see here. Richard, welcome, Richard. Richard asks a question: have you ever met or do you know people who chase eternity to the exclusion of a life in the here and now? I have, yes. It can be. It is rare because most of us are so attached to the physical, and that we do so to the detriment the of eternity, and get our focus on the moment only. And so, yes, I do know people that the saying we use is that they are so heavenly minded and they're no earthly good. Yes, it does happen on occasion, uh, and that in our current culture, though, to me, it's not as uh, big of an issue, because most of the time in our current culture, we ignore the spiritual, and we are still not fully understanding and embracing health in our mental and emotional beings. Um, and so, yes, Richard, to your question, I've known people, and I have seen the results. And what's truly sad is that some of those people will be so caught up in that they will actually ultimately uh, negatively affect their life here. And ultimately, I see a lot of those kind of people that their faith collapses before it's done. And it's truly unfortunate, because I don't know. Well, I do know that some faith uh, structures or constraints will include a component where readily get to the extreme of being so heavenly minded they're no earthly good. and and so we just have to really consider those things. And we always talk about balance, and that's a factor in balance, is to be well grounded, but have the ability to be in the spiritual as well. Um, let's see here. I want to make sure I'm not. Let's. And Mario makes a comment: leadership through authoritarianism is a sign of exclusion from the team concept. Uh, that is certainly a true statement, in Mario. um, let's see here. Okay. VJ asked, do you think faith grows in an individual with levels of maturity as well? Mental maturity paves a path for human beings to be closer and closer to eternity. Yes, indeed, the faith grows. If it doesn't grow, it is dying. And it's very important that, in my estimation, that faith grows and continues to move forward. And uh, because if not, it is dying even as you are living. And so, yes, faith should grow for us to be healthy, and it to be healthy. And as we get closer to eternity, and frankly, VJ, at my age, I'm getting much closer to eternity, and my perspectives change. My faith has grown more, and as a result, it affects my outlook in a way that is truly remarkable. So, thanks for that question. I hope I answered it. Sena asks or makes a statement: I think faith is something you have to have. You have hope or belief based on your own experience and from the experience of others. Also, by logical thinking, blind faith is much stronger. That you have believed, that you hope or believed whatever is happening or will happen, even in contrary to your reasoning. Yeah, faith is an interesting concept. It has, in order to be most effective, we have to believe it and have conviction of it to a point that if we were to ever find out our faith was wrong, that our life would be probably devastated. And so, yes, it has to be a hope or a belief. And blind faith is being stronger. Um, I understand blind faith because I think there are times in my life that, or no, I know there are times in my life where I just have to make a choice based on what I believe is direction or understanding. And even if I don't fully have logic to support it. Now, saying that, one of the things that I do like about my faith walk is that it has logic and it is sensible. But what happens is sometimes I may not have gained the understanding of the logic at a given time, and therefore it feels like it is a blind faith. But when I go through and have that hope and trust and behave in accordance with it, ultimately I look back. The old saying is that hindsight is 2020. In other words, perfect vision, and there's truth. And when I look back at the times I didn't have the logic, I then understood the logic that I couldn't see, and that helps me grow, of course. Let's see. Lee has a question. Is there a relationship between the secularization of America and the destruction of the family and increasing crime? Short answer, I believe there is, Lee, because if you look at the direction of our culture and things that have happened, that it has the decisions we've made over history in the U.S. has had a remarkable impact on family and behaviors, bad behaviors. And in fact, if you do some research, there was and look at history, you realize that there was a time where we chose as a culture or to take God and faith out of the picture. And as a result, and that's from if you will, a systemic standpoint. And when we did, our culture changed, and we have had remarkable impact as a result. So yes, there is a relationship, I believe, in secularization. And the way I see secularization is that when we have culturally and institutionally attempted to remove faith, God, spiritual, and things like that from our culture and make it dependent solely on physical earth and human nature alone, that it has impacted us. And so, yes, to answer your question, I believe it is a remarkable relationship, unfortunately, in a negative sense. Let's see. Zaid makes a comment. I would like to say stress is like pain in our bodies. It is an indication to us that there's something wrong. Our body responds to stressors with the cortisol hormone, but our mind and our attitude should take some control on the situation. Faith is the foundation of the mental response. It's a negative relationship between faith and stress. More faith, less stress. Yeah, I have to agree with you, Zaid, that I think that generally speaking, although our faith and our tenets of faith can be a source of stress, is rarely that way. Generally, it's more as our faith increases, which of course nurtures or nourishes our spirit, then our stress levels are going to go down because we have a way to address stressors that we can't always understand or have a full picture of. And so it's definitely a factor, and generally can be such a powerful factor for good as we address stress. And so I have to agree with you. Let's see. I must be missing someone. Cena, you have mentioned Charles Caldwell. If Charles is, oh, there you are, Charles. I'm sorry. Welcome aboard. I apologize for not mentioning you earlier. And I overlooked a comment by Rick. Rick, thanks for your comment. Faith is a struggle for me. Being an engineer makes having faith a struggle. If we can't see it, it makes it tough to believe. Make any sense? Of course it does. Yes, because especially with our culture and with, unfortunately, with education, we tend to be pushed towards not having faith and think that the only reality is our physical and what we do just in our mind alone. But what I find interesting, and Rick, I've had many people say that because faith is illogical, they don't have faith and won't have faith because they can't see it and understand it. But being not an engineer by trade, but I am, the way God's designed me, I look at the way things function and especially machinery. And people that say they can't have faith because they can't see it is rather interesting to me, because a lot of people will go in their life doing things that if they are saying they don't have faith, then they are behaving illogically. Because, for example, we go to turn on the lights. Most people, when they turn on a light, flip the switch, push a button, or whatever, have no clue how that happens. They know that it happens, but they don't have any clue how it happens. So when we go and we approach those situations that we can see, and we have to understand that it takes faith to do that. Another great simple example is that when we go to sit down on a stool, in a chair, wherever, we have some level of faith that we're going to, especially the first time we do it, that when we sit down, that it's not going to collapse under us and us fall to the floor. My favorite example of a lot of faith, and it seems like it's taking more faith every day, but driving. Most of us have no clue how it is that we can push one pedal and make a 2,000-pound object go at unbelievable speeds while we're sitting in it about 18 inches off the ground. And so I appreciate your training as an engineer and understanding how things work and working through it logically. And so I get that, and it can be a struggle. But at the end of the day, what most of us don't consider is that we live and walk in some form of faith in something all the time. We just don't think of it, and we only think of faith in spiritual terms. So yeah, I get that struggle and understand where you come from. And for me, it creates a challenge of always learning, because I know that things are happening around me, and I love to understand how they are. But in the same breath, I also recognize that I'm not going to understand everything out there. So it's important. And part of this is that, and I talk about us taking time, spending time in creation. Okay. And people that do this know what it's like when you get outside and you get away from things and just observe creation and its beauty, the trees, the plants, the animals, and all that's going on. The value of that is it reminds us that as a human, that we are very small. It doesn't mean we're not important. because, again, one of the principles of faith that I believe in, that we are each one created with great value and in an amazing way. And so I don't mean to diminish that, but in light of all of creation, when we see these amazing massive trees like the redwood trees, or when we watch the power of some of the animals, or watching a whale come up out of the water and things like that, those all affect our perspective, and hopefully helps us keep a good perspective, so that we keep things in balance. And so, again, the value there of faith and nurturing that aspect in our lives becomes important to help us with the right perspectives. And when we begin to have that perspective, it brings a trust factor, and knowing that we don't have to understand everything, and we can't control everything and influence everything. And by its very nature, that causes our stress to go down as we take time for those experiences. Let's see. Looking around here, want to make sure to read and share comments. By the way, I really like the fact that you all engage with each other as well as with me, and when Anton's here. Really appreciate that. Zaid makes comment, my faith in engineering is not equal to my faith in God. I understand one thing in this subject is that an engineer don't have absolute power on the object they're engineering. God does. Without faith in the engineer, I won't live in my apartment. Without faith in God, I won't go out of my apartment. Okay, that's an interesting perspective. And yes, part of who we're made to be is to have a mind to be able to come up with engineering ideas and to change things for the better. And very important. But as Zaid has shared, our faith has to balance those things, because sometimes we try to engineer things out that get us in trouble. And one of the ways we see that in our current cultures is the effects of medicine and the changes in the engineering related to medicine, because a lot of medicines related to engineering and design. And the challenge is that it raises a whole nother level of ethical questions from the unintended consequences of these choices and decision. And so a lot there. Labor makes a comment that faith is to believe what we do not see, and the reward of this faith is to see what we believe. Certainly, one of my favorite verses says that faith is the conviction of things not seen, and it is so true. But what's really interesting is that doesn't mean that we're always walking around blindly following something, because ultimately we can look back and see how even though we didn't understand at the time, that walking in faith made good sense for a lot of reasons. Again, because the fact that we can't see everything, we don't know everything, we don't even understand everything. And so day to day, we have to live in faith, and we have to have the balance. And so, yeah, it's an important piece. Hawk makes the comment, today's magic is tomorrow's science. There's actually a huge body of studies about the power of faith and prayer. Yeah, it's really interesting, because for a long time, faith and prayer were an intimate part of our culture. Well, and once, as we started diminishing those beliefs, the science begins to catch up and support that those beliefs in faith and prayer actually do have an effect, and it's demonstrable through evaluation. Richard says, faith is sometimes a little like love. We don't always understand why or how it works. Yeah, I like that one. That love is something that we all know and experience, but we don't understand how it works and how it even sometimes comes to being, especially in relationships between humans. And yeah, it's definitely a factor there. Let's see. VJ shares, faith grows with logical thinking, else that may be imposed or turn out to be blind faith, which may lead to radical or fanatic mindset. Yes, again, in my faith beliefs, my tenets of my faith, we are supposed to use the logic that we're designed with, but we aren't to let that control us. And because our logic is limited, and whereas God, in my tenet of faith, God's omniscient and omnipotent, and therefore has a better perspective. So when things happen and he allows them to happen or makes them happen, it's sometimes because his perspective is so much bigger than mine, it seems illogical at the time. But once I understand and look back, I can see the logic to it. It wasn't that it wasn't logical. It didn't fit my understanding or my logic at that given point. By the way, this is all part of why I encourage people to actively seek wisdom, because wisdom is when we begin to understand and see things through God's eyes. And when we do that more, it affects how we are affected by those around us and our circumstances. Let's see here. Again, welcome, Nestle. Glad to have you with us today. Appreciate you joining us. Let's see here. Okay. Hawk offers, I have faith that the sun will rise tomorrow. I can't prove it. I don't understand the astrophysics that proves it, but that doesn't make me lose that faith. So yeah, again, there is a balance to be found. And sometimes I even have to think in this way. The God that I believe in is so much bigger than me. There are times where I don't understand, but I have to trust. And it's a decision that we make to trust and have faith in something or someone that affects how we look at everything else. Welcome, Rafia. Glad to have you with us today. It's always good to hear from you from Canada. And let's see. Continue on. Again, I don't want to miss any comments. See, it's hard to believe. This is Richard. It's hard to believe in something one can't touch. But if you believe you can build something, faith can also be built over time. You won't be able to touch it, but you may come to feel it, which is a very powerful sense. Yeah, one of the analogies that I have heard and appreciate is the wind. You know, we can't see it. We can feel the results of it, but we can't explain it. And but we see the result of it in different ways, different planes, that its effect, and it can be a gentle movement and have one effect, or in extreme cases, it can be like tornadoes, hurricanes, and as a result, great effect. And we can't always explain it, but it's there. And if we deny that it's there because we can't see it and explain it, then we're going to live with the results of not believing it, and that being not prepared when the wind gets powerful. Let's see here. Libor says, and I assume this is a excuse me, a quote from Cicero: "A man of courage is also full of faith." That's removing negative stress. Have and follow your goals in life with courage, not as results of commitments and pressure. It's an interesting balance that we have that we have to walk in if we're going to be healthy, and that that the things that we are trying to achieve, we may not even be able to always have logic to it. For example, my vision for my life is that I want to help everyone find and reach their potential. And I understand the words, and I see the goal and the vision of it, and I can even get it in my head. But I cannot tell you how me as one person can go about doing that. But I know that's the drive and vision that God's given me. So again, there has to be a balance between understanding, including practical planning, and just sheer faith and trust. Appreciate Neslie's comment. Always pleasure, Kevin. Definitely, sun will rise again. Let's keep faith even in hard days. Part of the value of faith, by the way, is that if we have faith, it gives us, always offers hope. Whereas if we don't have it, we quite often don't have hope. And absence of hope can create a high level of stress for us, especially during tumultuous times or during turmoil. And right now, our very culture is in turmoil much of the time. And our hope through faith that things can and will be better becomes a factor. And part for me is that I know, if nothing else, that when I leave the physical realm through death, that I have eternity, and my hope is driven and can maintain, because eternity is going to be the better place. It's going to be the place that we're all striving for one way or another. And I have the hope that even in the greatest negative for most of us, that death doesn't take away my hope. And I think that's a factor for us. And the value, one of the values of faith in keeping us from readily being stressed. These days, all the talk about this virus going around, and it's going to make us sick and even kill us. Well, I don't have any wish to die, but at the same time, doesn't cause fear within me, the idea that I will die. And we all are going to die. It's just a matter of timing. And so, yeah, it's having faith and the hope that goes with it is so key. Appreciate you being here, Zaid. I understand you have to get ready for your day. Also, Richard, thanks for being here. And let's see, I want to continue looking at comments, because your comments are equally important, if not more important than mine. So I hope that we began to give a little context to the value of faith and that part of our lives to help us manage stress in a healthy fashion. By the way, part of what we do in the stress assessment, because we understand this principle, and is that we ask questions or help you make assessments in the area of faith and spiritual, because when we don't acknowledge those and address them, that can be a source of stress that we ignore or pretend doesn't exist, and we will definitely never address it. And let's see. VJ says eternity is the place we are all destined to. Yes, that is definitely something that I agree with you, VJ. We're all destined for eternity, but apparently not everyone sees it that way. There are a number of people, and this is throughout history, that think that what we live and experience here as a physical life on earth is all there is, and therefore their perspective on making choices is can be very different because it's all focused on the 70, 80 some odd years that we live on the earth. And so but as we consider that there is more than the physical life, and we realize that or come to a conclusion that that's somewhere that all of us are going to be at some point in some form or fashion, then it affects the way we approach the time that we have in the physical life that we here experience here. And that's, again, part of the value of a faith system that looks beyond what we're walking and see currently. And very important to realize that. So people that do not have a perspective of eternity and have faith can readily get discouraged and hopeless when we're in situations like we are. Part of the reason that we're seeing people, suicide rates and all going up is because a lot of people see this as the only thing there is, and as a result, they become hopeless. And I appreciate that Rafia makes a comment that having faith is important. Appreciate that support, Rafia. And I know we have shared that through our friendship on LinkedIn. And let's see. And Mario makes a comment. People think focusing means saying yes to what you're focusing on, but that's not the case. It means saying no to the other 100 good ideas out there. That's a good insight. To have faith doesn't mean that we have to abandon logic, and vice versa. We do not have to abandon faith to have logic. They both work. And so, like you said, when we try to focus, that doesn't mean that we don't see other things or consider other things. It just means a perspective at that moment. Nice comment there, Ed Mario. Let's see. Hawk makes comments. I have sat at some deathbeds. I know that something leaves at the moment we transition. Yeah, interesting, Hawk, that there has been some, over the last few decades, there's been some evidence that indicate a physical change of weight at death. And the only viable explanation, logical explanation, is that something aside from what we physically observe vacates the body. And the implication is that that might be evidence of our spirit and soul leaving the body. So it's and like you said, observing when you see people passing can profoundly affect our perspective of eternity. Let's see here. So again, I hope that everyone has taken away a piece of understanding here, and hopefully can see the value of having faith. What that faith looks like depends on each of our choices, but the faith that I have and that I know that others have definitely make a difference in managing our stress. And by growing and walking in that faith and including it as part of our total life, it can remarkably improve our management of our stress levels along the way. And and again, recognize that some faith structures can create stress as well. Okay, let's see. Now you're getting a tough one out there, VJ. How is faith different from trust? Let's see if I can explain that. Wow, that's a good question. I've got to think on that a bit. Off the top of my head, I think of faith as being something that is deeper and more profound than just trust. Just that's first glance, but you've raised a question I'm going to have to go and meditate on and pray about and do some research into understanding and see if I can come up with a better answer for that. Do you see a difference in them, VJ, or have a thought that you can share, or do the others of you have any thoughts? Let's see. Okay. Libor offers this, and it's certainly a good perspective, is that trust is created in interaction. Okay. Yeah, I can see that trust is more based on experience, whereas faith sometimes and can be based strictly on what we're told and understand, and may not, and maybe this is a way to look at it. Maybe we look and consider that faith is deeper and more blind than is trust. Okay, VJ, I think we're coming to some of the same conclusion. Faith is more spiritual and deeper, whereas trust is more humanly oriented. Yes, I like that. I think that's a good understanding. But I something I'm going to continue to chew on and think on, because it's a good question. I think it's a helpful understanding to have. Well, I appreciate everyone being here today, and I hope that Anton will make it back to be with us next week. Hopefully his child is feeling better and on the mend. And but I appreciate everyone engaging today. You guys always make the difference in how the show goes. It is you that makes that difference. Anton and I are here just to facilitate and share what we have, but it's much richer with y'all being here. Let's see. Before I close out, like to get all the comments in. Hawk says you can trust in the divine. Think that it will help you when you know you have faith. Okay, thank you for that, Hawk. So thank you again. We'll get the next topic out next week, and hope that you can join us. And I'm grateful today to have all the technology working together well. I appreciate the blessing you are. I pray that you will all have an amazing week, and I hope that you'll take the time to take a stress assessment. And even if you don't take stress assessment, really give consideration of ways that you can manage stress in your life so that you can maintain healthy body, soul, and spirit as you go on with your life day to day. So thank you, everyone. Have an amazing week. God bless. And we will see you back on the Human SOS show next Tuesday at 8 o'clock Eastern, and enjoy another topic of challenge and growth as we consider ways to manage stress in our lives. Take care, everyone. Bye.